Good morning. This is July 19th, and today I'm talking about, or what's on my mind, is astrology and models. I think um, models is this idea of like a situation or a way of describing um, or thinking of how you interact with the world. And rather than having models that are right or wrong in how they describe things, I think it's more important and more useful to think of models as whether they're useful or not. And I'll use astrology as an example because astrology is one part of the things that feed into human design. Before I got into human design, I wasn't really big into astrology. I didn't really understand it. And it was just one of those things that you look up in a newspaper and kind of like, oh, this is interesting, right? Kind of like surface level type of thing for like even any personality test. If you look up your personality, um, or if you do a personality test, you're probably going to get like a very high level description of you as an individual, for example. And that description, that high level description, doesn't necessarily, it doesn't say everything about you. It's just a very top level description. As a model, is it useful? Well, what it describes of you could be very useful depending on what that information is. And I think it's how you kind of look and understand and then interpret the information, how you put it into your own life. Kind of the question really is the information useful to you? If it's not, then ignore it. It's not anything that you have to, like, nobody says that you have to ascribe or prescribe to any specific type of personality test, especially something like astrology. So, from the perspective of a model, models just describe the way that kind of things are or things work, and it's a reasonable facsimile. It's something that just gives you a way of understanding an experience, let's say. So, then with astrology, what I found really interesting is I knew about like the high levels horoscope or zodiac kind of level. And I think like even if you get technical into it, that is a very specific slice of astrology and that understanding. Um, but then if you get deeper into astrology, there's actually, it's a really detailed system. There's a lot of information about where all the planets are, and then the angles between the planets, and all of these things say different things about you. Um, I'm not big into astrology in the sense that I'm not like an astrologer. I can't read astrology charts other than like just looking up definitions and then interpreting them, which is kind of like reading, I guess, but there's a lot of detail there. What I have found though is looking at um, even astrology from the perspective of having a sun, a moon, and a rising sign. Because like you have basically placements of all the different planets. Sun, moon, and rising are three of the big things that affect your like basically like a majority of your personality, for example. So like as a Taurus sun, there's like groundedness, a need to take things slowly, kind of like relax into things. And the more that I think about that and relate to that, I feel that that tracks. Like that's something that is really uh, like something that I can I can get on board with, right? I believe my moon sign is Scorpio, and I actually have like a number of different placements in Scorpio, and that's kind of like this deep under like under the surface kind of vibe, where there's like a lot of depth and like internal thinking and reflection, stuff like that. And that's kind of very much me as well. So, from that perspective of like reading these kind of broad descriptions, and then even piecing together broad descriptions of like sun, moon, and rising signs, considering how those, like how that information, if it's useful to me, like why reject it, right? Mm, Instagram is like where I learn a lot about this or it's just kind of where I keep a pulse on just kind of what's going on. That's one place where there's like a lot of like Instagram posts about like descriptions of like, you know, you're this type of drink or you're this type of character or whatever. And I think that it's just interesting to think about in terms of like archetypes or metaphors because, again, everything is context. This gives context to our experience. So, astrology, the other place that I explore astrology is actually through the CoStar Astrology app. And um, it's been a really interesting experience checking in with this astrology app because every day it gives a slightly different reading specific to my chart, which is it kind of considers a lot of the different features and some of the things on there. I don't fully understand the reason that these things are like, if this is aligned, this is your experience. What I am noticing though is the more that I'm moving and living in alignment, right? Like following the things that basically I've put into my life that come and build this Haizhen transformation program. The more that I do that, the more that every morning that I look at my astrology reading in CoStar, the more that those things are aligned. Definitely, there are like themes that either I've been thinking about or that kind of have come up that I find like just really, really accurate for that time and that time in that specific place. Like, for example, today, it says this. I should probably read it out. But it says, try to work on constructing an outer image that best serves your inner needs. And what was I saying the last couple of days? It's like or even over the last month, I've been thinking about this idea of like how to show up on social media or in videos like this. And the conclusion that I kind of got to was I need to show up as myself, right? Like that's the only option. And talking about like how it's a bit of a challenge to show up that way because of this or that, like different narratives and stories, to kind of conceptualize or rationalize that actual thing. Now, this thing that's a message that's saying like construct an outer image that serves my inner needs, I think just even says that and confirms that to me even more that I need to present myself in the way that makes the most sense for me, like show up as myself, and then everything else will follow. Because, like, what does it say? Stop crafting a personality you think others want. The constant shape-shifting exhausts you and fools no one. Your actual thoughts and feelings, unfiltered, are worth more than the perfect performance. Drop the act. And this is something that I've been moving through like a lot over the last while. A really nice comment from my cousin saying that I'm looking more natural on these videos, and I think that aligns with what I'm reading here. So thank you. What else is interesting here? So there's usually like things that are like day to day, kind of like do's and don'ts, and then there's because I have like the pro subscription or whatnot. There's a section called How It Plays Out on Earth, and it just talks about some of the descriptions that some of the descriptions of things that I might experience in this day. And one of the things here actually stands out. It says wardrobe that feels like you, not trends. And that's something that I've been leaning into a lot more, like just kind of like, what's my outfit? So then one is, I guess there's less mental load, like less thinking that has to go into that process of choosing something in the morning. Kind of reminds me of that person, Anna Wintour, with she wears the same dress or whatever, like massive oversimplification. So like that's interesting. It's like, oh, like this is kind of on point. I'm like kind of aligning into that. And that's one of the things that I notice as I move kind of more into alignment and I'm checking in on this thing every day, that it's just curious to notice. So as a model, it's useful for me because it gives me direction. Why is it useful? Because I find that my experience and my alignment and the things that I'm already experiencing or wanting to experience, or the things that I feel are important are already coming up in my life. And this, rather than like confirmation bias, is kind of like just a kind of parallel, like, oh, it's kind of like on the right track. Makes me think a little bit of like deja vu. It's like, what is deja vu? And I don't know that there's a good, um, I mean, there's lots of good explanations on what it is and theories about all of that. And for myself, the way that I just look at it is as a model that if I'm experiencing a sense of deja vu, to me, that means that I'm moving on the path that I intend or I intended to be moving along. So it's almost like, oh, like just had some deja vu, must be on the right track. Kind of that kind of model. And I'm here now, I'm happy with where I am now, and all of the experiences of deja vu that happened in the past have led me to this point. So it's I can't confirm or deny whether or not that is the actual, like, what deja vu actually is. But for me, as a useful model to move forward, even, or a kind of like validation or confirmation of my path, my journey, it's a good model for me, right? So that's a good example of a model, right? Like, because like, what is deja vu? Could it be this like freaky paranormal thing? Is it like just brain activity? Like, those are also models that can be used. But if it's just brain activity, that's not useful for me. If it's like a creepy paranormal thing, then not necessarily useful, unless the use is for entertainment, and then it's kind of good for an evening of like, like maybe let's think about like this experience and kind of like live in that for a little bit. So again, it's like these are models. That's when I think of models, I like that idea rather than like theories, because theories kind of gets into like the is it truth? Is it truth? And I think that when we look at science and scientific process and all of this, like science really is looking at an observation of what reality is putting in front of you. Um, Science comes up with theories and hypotheses. Hypotheses are proven or disproven based on the observations that kind of come into um, that is measured through the scientific process. And then at the same time, science says a lot of things and describes things in ways that are useful, but not always accurate, right? So physics is a big one. Like if you are spending any time in the spiritual community, like, or yeah, like let's say spiritual, metaphysical, like whatever, like with that kind of woo-woo kind of place. You might hear a lot about like quantum physics and it being used to describe certain like kind of woo, kind of magical types of things. And at the same time, um, science also has Newtonian physics, which is based on matter, right? And all of those equations. Now, that's a great example of a model that is useful, right? Like knowing like the acceleration, like the what is it, like it's been a while since I've done Newtonian physics, but like you have equations and stuff like velocity and mass of objects. You can talk about momentum and transferring, like all of these things. And those equations are useful to have some predictions, right? So then you can guess or you can predict how things will move or how objects will interact. But the current science is kind of in this quantum realm, talking about how like I'm not going to explain quantum physics, but it's basically like a whole other way of understanding our reality. And with that in mind, that the science says that is a more accurate description of what happens in like how to explain our reality. So then the question is like, how useful is that? It can be useful. Like if you think about what quantum physics says, like even with like the double slit experiment, where like light is seen as a wave or a particle, like that type of behavior, um, or you can get into the idea of Schrodinger's cat, where there's like a quantum wave function of the universe type of thing. Can definitely get into my thoughts on those if you're interested. I probably will, even if you're not interested, just not today, because we'll be here for hours. Maybe not hours, but we'll be here for a while. So from a model perspective, if you could look at astrology as something that, I don't know, just gives you further depth into understanding who you are. It kind of reflects on that idea that your external experience is a mirror of your internal experience. So whatever that you see out there and you interpret and you perceive is a direct reflection of your internal state. So if you're not ready to look at astrology, there's very good reason for that. And if you are ready to look into astrology, also a very good reason for that. Um, if you're kind of much more on the science kind of end of things, as where I kind of like came into this whole process, um, you might be thinking like, oh, like it makes no sense. How could the positions of the planets affect who I am? Well, I think from an observation perspective, if you just take it as an observation that at the time that you were born, all the planets were in a very specific location and they continue to move in a more or less predictable way. And because they move in those spaces, as you're going through your life, you can even make a correlation with the um, position of the planets in the sky. Now we're talking about correlation, and there's that whole thing about like correlation is not causation. But if the correlations create a model that is useful for you, then go ahead and use it. Explore it. There's no need to say like, hey, like I'm hard into this one way. Like I only care about science. I need facts, and then you're discounting like other observations that you could be having. Now, sure, a study of one, like an N of one study where you are the only participant is like, sure, there's not a lot of power in that. However, for your specific experience, your lived experience, it will one-to-one match your experience. So something to consider, a way of just broadening your whole perspective. I think I'm reflecting on this right now because like part of my program is talking about models as a way of kind of like understanding. And I think like this kind of maybe loops back into this idea of like creating, what was it? Creating an outer truth, the outer image that serves my inner needs. I think sometimes the things that I think, or some of the ways that I put information together seems a little bit like out there, and maybe it's two things. One is like am I concerned about like how certain things will land to other people? And the answer is yes. Like there was a point, and even sometimes now, like it kind of like sits in the back of my head. But what I've noticed is that there are more and more people out there who are more ready to have this type of conversation, or at least think through something along these lines, rather than just being fully dismissive because of like it's not real or it's not science. And part of that is the way that I kind of interact with that type of reaction. So I've gotten better at kind of like handling obstacles, I suppose, or just like questioning, just exploring where another person's belief comes from. And I guess if my belief goes deeper than theirs, then maybe I've thought about it a little bit more, and maybe it could be a model that might be useful to you. Um, like that came up a lot in when I first got certified as a hypnotist, because I was bringing that back into like a healthcare kind of world, and I was like, how am I going to put like hypnosis into my daily practice? And I did, um, because like hypnosis is not about mind control. If anything, it's just really effective communication, and it's just a different model of communicating that I find really effective, and that's one of the things. But it's like how was I to use that model and make it effective in my own context? So that's one thing. The other piece of it is like the human design, right? Like I'm gonna just pop up my human design chart, because like if you've never seen one, you'll probably react the way that I did, of like looking at this chart and being like, what is going on? What is all of this stuff over here? And honestly, like the first time that I saw this, I just filed it away again. I was like, this is too much. I'm gonna park it. When I did come back to it and start reading more about it, like astrology is one of the disciplines or the knowledge systems that fed into the creation or the creation or the channeling of human design. Again, what's really great that I really love about human design is that there's so much depth of information. It can go really deep, and also what it does is it gives you your strategy, your authority that helps you understand the decisions and the opportunities that were meant for you. If you're tired of not being able to make decisions and feeling like you're lost and feeling all of those terrible things about like being indecisive and like, am I making the right choice? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing with my life? Like, I thought I was supposed to be doing what I was doing, and now I'm just stuck in this life that I've had kind of laid out for me, this path that I've been told to walk. And I've gotten to a certain point and I'm like, what do I do now here? If you're kind of sitting in that boat, this is where human design and the Haizhen transformation can be deeply transformative for you, because when you can understand who you are at your very core, your core frequency, your core essence, then you can show up as that. Knowing where to start, that's where the clarity of the Haizhen transformation comes in. The transformation is about letting go of the pieces of you that are not for you to hold. And so that you can finally shine in your true brilliance, to show up as you are. And that last part, brilliance, I'm actually working through that final thing. How do I make brilliance real for you? I think the clarity part is a mental clarity, to be able to see yourself and understand where you are coming from and who you're meant to be. The transformation part is about embodying, is like feeling that piece of you, feeling the parts that are not you when they come up so that you can put them down, and then feeling into the parts that are you so that you can live in that space more and more. And finally, the brilliance part will be a activity like a workbook or something that will make that not just real mentally, not just real in your body, but also real in space, which is to actually write down so one of the pieces is either a purpose statement, to know how to present yourself in other different written forms. So it could show up as voice in like how you communicate with other people. That's one place. But the other more common place is either ways that you'll represent yourself for either employers or clients. So resumes, cover letters, interviews, or whether you're showing up online on your, you need to make websites and write emails and things like that. So this is where we're going with the Haizhen transformation. If you're interested, start by looking up your human design chart. That's a really great place to start. Jump into there, understand your strategy, authority, your signature, and your not-self. And message me. Ask me any questions. Would love to have a chat. Would love to chat with you. That is it for today. One of these days, I'm going to come up with like a really fun sign-off that I'm going to enjoy doing like on a regular basis. I just don't have that yet. So for now, we're going to just awkwardly end the video.